They got the numbers on it. There's that Trey Mason. Mason running to the 30. Mason to the 35. He's tackled. Game over. Those are the champions of college football. Celebrate Seminoles. FSU 34. Auburn 31.
Florida State opens up their season Saturday in Ireland. They'll take on Georgia Tech. Welcome to our Seminole Roundtable. I am Rick Ballou of 1010XL and 92.5 FM. I could run behind these two guys. Nile Lawrence-Stample won a national championship at Florida State in 2013, and I feel like I almost grew up with this man, Todd Fordham, part of that 1993 national title team. Todd and I came over here right around the same time with the Jaguars as well in 1997. I got here in 96. But Todd Fordham, always good to see you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Now, getting excited about the season?
Absolutely, man. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, I'm going to ask you, but I almost feel like we know the answer and it's passed by, but the whole hangover of being the only team in the history of college football to go undefeated and be left out of an opportunity to play for a national championship, and then you have all of those players hold out and you get absolutely destroyed by Georgia. Todd, I'll begin with you. How much of that still lingers now when we're a couple days away from toe meets leather for the 2024 season?
I don't think it lingers. I think Mike Norvell's done a great job with getting them through that and understanding, like, this is a new year. I mean, and you got to understand as a football player, even from day to day, like what you did yesterday, you learn from it and you move on, but that has to be behind you and you got to move forward. And so I think Norvell's done a great job with talking those guys through that and letting them understand that, look, it's about what we do this year. This is what matters. And going to a couple of their practices, there didn't seem to be a hangover in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree. I think, especially with football, they always say you got to just get to the next play. You got to go to the next play. So you got to get to the next game. In the last game, whether you did good or bad, it can't transfer it over to this game. We have to make sure every single game is kind of individualized. So I think this hangover is gone. I think Norvell's done a good job transitioning them and making sure that everybody's kind of dialed in on what's important. I think it's not completely gone because we have to use that as somewhat motivation. But I think all in all, I think we're ready to go. I'm not seeing much of that, especially seeing practice. I'm not seeing much of it at all.
Yeah, that's an interesting word, motivation, and whether it's bulletin board material. Paul Feinbaum went off on Florida State about a week or so ago. I've always been told as a non-player, you guys obviously both played in college at Florida State and in the NFL. I've always been told that bulletin board stuff's gone by the second play. But when you hear what people have said in a negative way and the tears and the crying and everything, how much more does that help or doesn't it at all to prepare for this season?
I think the only thing the coaches have to do is make sure that they are directing the right message consistently, and you're able to have that kind of go throughout the team. Is when you have mixed messages to where you have certain coaches saying this and certain coaches saying that. A good organization and a coach like Norvell is going to make sure all the coaches are on the same page. And if the coaches are on the same page, they're giving the same message. Those leaders are giving the same message to their to those younger freshmen and stuff like that. So I think, at the end of the day, I don't think it messes too much as long as the inner circle has the right message and they're pushing it to everybody on the team.
Yeah, I agree. I think the message is clear from Norvell, is that this is a new team. We have new challenges in front of us. And what happened last year, you can use it as motivation, and they can say bulletin board material is gone. Bulletin board material in my mind is, I mean, that's kind of cliche as we know, but it's about how you prepare that week. And you're preparing all week or you've gone through the whole offseason as FSU has, and all you have to say in the message is, like most of America said, we weren't good enough. Mm-hmm. And so if you can't come ready to play with that in mind and have prepared, you've prepared for that energy. And it's about the energy of playing the game every play, no matter what happened the last play, being ready to go the next play. That's where you gain it from. And so it can be bulletin board material, but at the end of the day, you've prepared knowing that everybody in America said we weren't good enough.
The expectations are still really high this year for Florida State, regardless of all the talent they lost, both off their offense and defense, to the National Football League. Here comes DJ Uiagalelei, 40 career starts, 30-10, benched at Clemson, went off and relit his career a season ago at Oregon State. Now you and I were out, watched him practice for a couple of days. Todd, I know you've seen him have an opportunity as well to practice here during the summer and throughout training camp. The issue with him is completion percentage. 3 of his 4 years, less than 60%, including 57% last season. How concerned are you about DJU?
I am concerned only because the game has moved towards you have to have a great guy playing quarterback. And I feel like DJ is a good player. I really do. What I'm more concerned about is just how the makeup of the team has been with Jordan Travis and him getting you out of issues and being able to do certain things that DJ and most quarterbacks can't do. And so it's a different makeup, and how are we adjusting to that? Having watched practice, I think we're better on both the offensive line and defensive line. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're going to be a different team than what we were with Jordan, where we're having a mismatch, some at the offensive line. And so part of what his getting out of problems was created by not playing consistently on the offensive line. I do feel like we're going to be pretty good offensive line-wise. And if we give DJ time and he has the ability to sit back there and do what he does well in reading defense, I feel good about it. But that's the question mark. How good does he play? Because that's the question mark on every team in college and NFL is how good is that guy playing?
Nile?
It's I think it's hard because let's shout out to Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis had one of the best. I've never seen a quarterback have such a big improvement one year over the other that I've seen for Jordan Travis. It's really hard to compare that, especially as Norvell is not necessarily used to a style quarterback that way in terms of a little bit shorter, a little bit more agile. And now obviously we have a DJU who can still manipulate the ball and still run the ball. You can still see that Norvell is transitioning into that style. And I think DJU fits that well, but like I said again, Jordan had an unbelievable year. No one really expected Jordan to have the year that he had. And I think as long as Norvell can dial in and put DJ in the best situations possible, I think he will have a good season because we have a lot of threats coming out of the backfield, as well as obviously receiver can be a little bit touchy. But I think as long as we can get him into the right spots and make his progressions and do what we need to do, I think he has the arm that can get us to the next level. So I'm not as worried, but I do think that the coaching is going to play a huge part in him being able to have a successful season.
It's great to have you with us. This is our Seminole Roundtable. I'm surrounded by a couple of former Florida State Seminoles, Nile Lawrence-Stample, Todd Fordham. I happen to be a Florida State grad as well. My name is Rick Ballou. Let's go back to you, Nile. This offense, man, I think they got 5 backs, and I think they can run and stop the run. I agree with what you said, Todd. I think this is the best offensive line that we've seen around here since the 2013 team that you played with. I am nervous about the wide receivers and their lack of production to date. Let's begin with you. What do you think of this offense?
I think the offense has so many tools, and it's nerve-wracking, I think, for everyone because we haven't really seen. It's good on paper. DJU obviously has some stuff to prove, which I'm excited about because I feel like players like DJU, when they put their backs against the wall, they're going to respond well, and I think he will respond well this season. But when you look at it as on paper, we have a lot of threats. We have a lot of really, really good high-quality players, but us not having that seniority and that tenure of us playing together is really giving a lot of people anxiety, right? But I think when you have a lack of confidence when it comes to the players or it as a whole, I think a lot of people will say, if you get into a pinch, rely on your technique as a player, right? Rely on your technique and it'll get you through. I think as an organization, you say rely on your coach. If you're having some doubt, rely on your coach. And I think Norvell has proven over the past years that he can put players in the right position in order to be productive. So I think as a whole, we have the threats. We haven't seen them play together, but I am heavily relying on Norvell to figure it out and find where they fit well in order for us to have a productive season.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. You know, coach's biggest job is to make sure he puts his players in a position to succeed. So what does he need to do? I mean, DJ is different than Jordan Travis. Okay, so now let's build the offense around DJ and what he does well. Well, the first thing to help a quarterback is give him a great backfield. Mm-hmm. And I think they've done that. Give him a great offensive line. I think the offensive line is doing really well. Having gone there, I spend a lot of time watching Coach Atkins and that group work. They are some big guys, and they can move and they can do some things. And now they have depth. And so I feel really good about what they can do in the box. Obviously, receiver is a question, and mainly the reason it's a question, not a question of talent, it's a question of we haven't seen the production yet. Why? Because the two guys that produced last year are in the NFL. They were pretty good. And so now we have young guys that have, you know, whether they waited their turn or come, you know, transferred in, there's some talent in that room. Now, can they produce and can they do what they need to do to help DJ? But the biggest part to me, to start a season, when you have a quarterback that's new, that is a pocket quarterback, that has the ability to run too. Now, DJ can run, has the ability to do that. You need to play well up front. And for a team to be successful, in my opinion, offensively, as much as it's a quarterback league now, you still got to be really good up front. And if you can establish the run, then the pass game can come along. And I feel great about that. I think we can establish the run. I think we got 5 guys that can run the ball. I think we could be really good. And if we can do that and bring DJ and not put everything on his back to start with and let him grow in this and let Coach Norvell and the offensive coordinator with Atkins grow in how they call the game, I think we'll be okay.
Unfortunately for Florida State fans, most are aware of the fact that Alex Atkins will not be a part of the first 3 games for an NIL violation. So he's going to sit out. I believe you pronounce it Gabe Fertitta, who's coming down from an advisory role, an offensive advisory role. So he'll be handling the offense. Obviously, Mike Norvell is going to call plays. And you guys both mentioned Norvell. This is where I think he shows how good of a coach he is, because I think Roydell Williams is going to get the majority of the footballs from the backfield. But Toafili is such an explosive player. If you have indecision on your wide receiver, I mean, put him in the slot or take Jalen Lucas and have a 2-back set and put him in motion. He's the fastest guy on campus. Find a way to get your best players the football. And when you look at Mike Norvell, he's won basically with 3 stars, and he's won with transfer portals that weren't really highly regarded. All right, Keon Coleman was, Shaheem Bell was, but I mean, go back and look at Benson and Wilson and Verse and their numbers before they got to Florida State. Players are getting better under Mike Norvell and his staff. So, Nile, I think this is huge now, especially early on. Find ways to get your best players the football.
Yeah, if you can, especially I was thinking, I'm like, if we can get multiple of our star players on the field at the same time, then we talk about it. As a defensive player, you know, as you're going into the film room and you're breaking film down, you're realizing that, okay, I have to start. This is a star player. This is the guy we have to look after. Or if there is the side of the ball that they like to run to, we're going to try to pinpoint that side and blitz that side because they're comfortable running it to that side. But if you have a multi-set backfield that has top tier talent in it, it's going to be very difficult in order to defend that. So especially going from week to week to week. So with all the depth that we have at running back, there's definitely no reason for us to not have at least Toafili or some other players in order to play slot or kind of move around a little bit, as well as, so, and when we're talking about in terms of the offense and how we can be a little bit more effective or what we're worried about, I think another thing that's going to have to happen is putting DJ in good situations in order to be able to convert. Like, we're not wanting to come into a game and not allow him to at least have a check down in the first 3 plays of the game. We're not going to throw the ball Hail Mary on the first play of the game. This is not the type of quarterback that we want to do that with. If not, maybe on first down, but we want to get him rolling. We want to get him comfortable in order for us to do that. And that's how we do establish that run game. So I think it's going to be so much coaching, whereas some other teams, some other games, you're able to say, all right, boys, just line it up, go. Like, here's the script, go ahead and run the script. We're going to have to be so detailed on how we go about running it that I think it's going to be the biggest part of our season is the coaching that's going to go around it.
Todd, final thoughts on the offense?
I think you guys hit a lot of what I'm thinking that they're going to do, because they have so many backs that they're able to create mismatches when they're able to run the ball, and out of that running the ball, now there's an extension. It's not the old time where we lined up with, two tight ends and ran the ball. Not that they won't do that, but, we used to line up in two tight ends and we were going to run the ball, and we dared you to try to stop us.
Yeah.
Now, because of the way the offenses are and the fact that DJ has experience, he understands where to go with the ball and what to do. Your offensive line has experience. They know how to block the game up. I think you're going to see an extension of those backs being, because they are dangerous with the ball in their hand, they're going to be an extension of the run game to the pass game, and they're going to be a part of that. And they're going to look to create matchup problems for defenses and get the ball in the hands of the guys that can make plays. Toafili, he can be a running back, can be real dangerous, but he can also slip out of the backfield in a hurry and catch a ball and take it to the house. And so where last year we were, Jordan Travis was able to run and do some things, but he also had some great receivers. I think you're going to see a little bit more of a mismatch between the run and the pass that are kind of meshed together, and that's how they're going to create the mismatches that we're going to see. And the key is to win on first and second down, so you stay in front of the chains and it's manageable third downs. You do that with this type of team, and with the way they're built, they're going to be tough to deal with.
Toafili is the leading receiver who does return. Then it's Morlock as a tight end. So it's going to be certainly very interesting to see how Florida State does adapt this year offensively. Plenty of talent. Just it's time for these young men to step up. All right, defensively, boy, it's been a long time since I've said this, Todd, but they reloaded. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what Florida State used to do. That hasn't been the case as of late. We just talked about how Norvell early on has been winning with 3-star and with transfer portal kids. Well, he's starting to get the 4-star kids now, and it appears that this year's recruiting class is going to be his best since he's been in Tallahassee. A great defensive line, an NFL defensive line. I think NFL corners, maybe a little thin at linebacker because you lost Deloach and you lost Bethune. Your thoughts on Florida State, Steve?
Well, I will tell you this. When I went over to watch practice, the first thing I told Alex Atkins is, look, there's not many defensive lines on teams that you're going to see that's bigger and better looking than ours. We have a huge defensive line, and we are deep. And so we have more depth and talent than I've seen in a long time on the defensive front. It reminded me when I came into Florida State and you had all those great defensive linemen. Obviously, right now the question mark is linebacker because we do have some young guys. I think there's talent, but how quick can they get up to speed? That game speed's a lot faster, and so but a great linebacker is usually great because they have some dudes in front of them that's eating up blocks, and it's going to take a couple of dudes to block some of those guys up front. I've been able to watch 3 or 4 of those guys even when they were in high school. We played against them, and so I've seen them grow, and they're players. Yeah. And so I feel really good about that, and I think the secondary is good. I go back to whether you're talking about offense or defense. Part of what is going to make Florida State good this year, what made them great last year, is when you go to their practice, they practice hard and fast and under pressure all the time. And that helps you win football games because getting to a game, it's easier than what you just went through a whole week of practice. So I do feel like that's one of the things Mike Norvell does is he puts those guys in pressure situations. He practices hard. You go from one place to another, and there's not a lot of stopping. So you're always ready to go. And those big defensive linemen, they're going to be in shape, and they're coming. Now,
you've been over there for practice in Tallahassee. You've been here. You were right up there with Odell Haggins when they practiced here on the campus of the University of North Florida. Actually, that one was in the Flex Field downtown. And you also took part in the meeting. So I know you got a pretty good grasp on what they're trying to do here defensively.
Yeah, the defense is obviously really stout. I think we have a really good defense, probably one of the better defenses that we've had in a while. Obviously, last year's was great, but it's really crazy how we've, like you said, been able to reload. And I think it's gonna be one of the more interesting years to see kind of what Adam Fuller kind of comes up with the players that he has. But there's something that I'm thinking of. So in terms of defensive line, we have some really, really good players up front. We do have some solid players coming in terms of rotational guys too, which I think will be huge. But one thing that we don't really have, we're not extremely stacked when it comes to being able to defend the run on the inside. We do have some good players, but I think if things get a little bit tough, it may be a little harder in order to withstand that. But one thing that it looks like we should hopefully be able to do is establish the run. And if you can establish the run, our guys will be off the field a little bit less. So if we're talking 20 reps a game that we can shed off because we're able to establish a run, we're talking significant amount of gains in order for our starters to stay on the field longer, for us to be able to convert and get them off the field on third down, for our players to not get hurt. So we're talking a much better game. So I think where our a little bit of an issue is on the defense, I think we're able to gain that from the offense as long as we're able to establish that. So I think it could really match well. But all in all, our defensive back room is probably one of the better that we've seen. It is extremely stout. We got some really good pickups this past off season as well. Our linebacker room, like you said, I think it's solid, but we are a little bit light there. But I think we have some guys that will move around, as well as be able to come off the field on third downs. We may have a Cam Riley stay on. We may have Omar Graham come back in. You never know. So we have some options there, and then obviously our defensive line is extremely stout, extremely large in order to stop the run when we are kind of all there. But all in all, it starts up front. So I think if we can establish and choke them at the line of scrimmage like Odell wants to, it won't really matter.
You're going to find out about Florida State's run defense too early on. I mean, with Georgia Tech and then Boston College, both teams have versatile quarterbacks, and really their forte for both those programs is running the football. So you hope to take them out of their game and make them play from behind and have to pass the football. Nile Lawrence-Stample, Todd Fordham, Seminole Roundtable. I'm Rick Ballou. All right, let's wrap our conversation with just an overview in the schedule. Certainly November is brutal when you go to Miami, then you turn around and you go to Notre Dame, but that's years away as far as I'm concerned. Todd, you got a tricky one coming up here in just a couple days. You fly all the way out to Ireland. Who knows what's going to happen in week one? Georgia Tech's always been one of those schools, regardless of who the coach is, they play smart football. And you got to read your keys, stay at home, not over pursuit. This could be interesting coming up on Saturday. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, it always makes you a little bit nervous as a football coach myself. I mean, when you're traveling that far, to go play a game and you're taking guys out of an element, most guys, including me, I've never been to Ireland. I mean, there's things that are different. Your food's different, your sleep's different, all those things. And so there's a mental part of that game that I do feel Norvell will do a good job with keeping his guys ready to play. However, you're still in that environment that's unusual. The crazy thing is that Georgia Tech's had a whole offseason to prepare for you. They know what you do. They're going to be ready. They are fired up for this game. They're the only game on TV on Saturday. They're trying to break into that national prominence with Brent Key as the head coach, and they finished pretty well last year, and they're a scary team, and we don't know how good they're going to be this year. But I will say this: is they will be ready for this game. Yeah, and they're probably riding higher because they're playing Florida State, a team that went undefeated. What's Brent Key telling his guys? Hey, this team didn't lose a game last year until the bowl game. They should have been in the national championship. You want to make a name for yourself? This is where you do it. And so I feel like they'll be ready to play. And I do worry a little bit about us just traveling over there. And look, Georgia Tech's a better team than they were 2 or 3 years ago. And some of these guys that, have seen Georgia Tech, they hadn't really been in the conversation. I think they're close. And so I worry a little bit about it just because of where they're going. But I don't worry about the fact that Norvell will have those guys ready. I think he will have them ready. and I think they will come off an off season where they're hungry.
Yeah. We have somewhat of an advantage. I wouldn't say an advantage, but in terms of like what a personnel and what the stats say, Georgia Tech did not do a good job stopping the run last year. They did not do. They were actually one of the worst teams in order to stop the run last year. So that's an advantage for us. Obviously, I'm sure they've tried to, especially in the portal, they've tried to figure some things out in order to be able to stop that run a little bit better. But it will be something that we'll have to defend. They were actually pretty solid at running the ball. So I think if we can go ahead and stop the run early and often, I think it's going to be a very, very good game in order for us to be able to run the clock down and make it be somewhat of a low scoring game. But I'm not necessarily worried. Just like you said, Georgia Tech had their off season. We had our off season. And I think that it's going to be the team that can face adversity better, and who better not than Florida State University. The things that we've gone through and the things that and the stage that we have played at, I think that this is nothing but a continuation of that regular season, regardless of where it is. And I think Florida State is a perfect team in order to start the season on such a big stage.
Yeah. All right, so it's Georgia Tech Saturday, then Labor Day evening, BC, the home opener in God's country. Should be electrifying that evening against Boston College. Memphis comes in, where, of course, Mike Norvell left to take the job at Florida State. And then a home date with Cal. Florida State plays Florida State football. You're 4-0. You're cruising into the latter part of September, getting ready for October. This is where it gets tricky. At SMU. In Dallas, first ever game in the ACC for SMU. Had a very good season a year ago. But, Todd, this to me is one of those games that Clemson's next, and then Miami's 2 weeks away, then it's Carolina, then it's Notre Dame. Easy to overlook an opponent like going on the road and playing SMU.
Yeah, and I mean, SMU's getting a little bit of, high talk here, in this. I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that their receiving crew got ranked the top or one of the higher
Indeed,
groups. Yeah. And so SMU's a player, and then, like you said, it's about the trap game, but I think Norvell has shown even last year, I mean, he gets his guys ready to play. And I think that's one of the things that I've been most proud for as watching him as the head coach is his kids play hard every game. And they've played hard no matter what was up or down. They kept playing hard, and they played for 4 quarters. And so I think he does a pretty good job with getting those guys ready. But you do have to worry about a trap game because Clemson's next, and who's going to win the ACC, Clemson or Florida State, and that's what they keep saying. And then, of course, you start getting ready for the Miamis as you start hearing those rumblings. And so, yeah, you got to worry about that game. But I think if we continue to do what Mike Norvell's had these guys doing, we'll be ready to roll.
Nile, it's a stretch of 3 road games in 4 weeks. At SMU, home with Clemson. You get the bye at kind of a weird time. It's before the Duke game. Former Florida State grad Manny Diaz, now the head coach at Duke. You get them on a Friday night. And then you go to Miami. So, again, 3 out of 4 games on the road.
Yeah. And speaking on this SMU game, it's the trap game. I feel like a lot of the times it's on the players, right? The players, you come in to practice and the coach has got to get you fired up, and they're trying to threaten you, basically saying, hey, listen, do not take them lightly. And Jimbo did that a lot, especially when it came to some of these smaller teams and the Georgia Southerns. He's like, listen, we're not doing that. We're not going to go ahead and lax just because this is that type of game. So the head coach is typically in gear. It's really the players. So there's going to be a lot of leadership that the leaders are going to have to emerge and say, hey, listen, I know coach is saying this, but this SMU is a very good team. And we have to make sure we're having our individual leaders in our individual segments that are pushing and making sure these players are doing all the regular things, studying film, going to training room, doing all the things. This is not a week off. So we have to keep locked in. But as the season goes, with the portal and different players coming in, I feel like you don't have established leaders. I think you have leaders that kind of build throughout the season now, which is so weird, right? It is. Because you have it's tenure and you're like, okay, you're going to be a leader next year. I can see it happening. But now it's guys coming in. So it's like, as you go through the season, you're going to have players that are going to emerge, and those players are really going to be the key to us really winning the season. Norvell can only do so much.
Yeah. Final month of the season, it's difficult. North Carolina at Notre Dame. Charlie South comes in, then Florida comes in. But we've seen, even with the Gators down the last couple of years, it's still an intense rivalry. And we started talking about Jordan Travis, that what he did 2 years ago. They don't beat Florida if Jordan Travis doesn't have one of the greatest games that any Seminole quarterback has ever heard. You know what it's like to go to Notre Dame. You were there for the game of the century in '93. I was there as well. They let the grass grow. They watered it before a kick, and Notre Dame played some old school football on that day. I know it's very, very far away, but man, that's a night game in South Bend. Can you imagine what that's going to be like?
Night game in South Bend in November. It's going to be cold. It's going to be windy. You're going to have all the Irish going crazy. There's, it's a mystique of playing at Notre Dame. I mean, no matter where you go to college, everybody always heard about Notre Dame, and we're a fan of Notre Dame football just because of the history. So that's a tough game. And then, you're talking about at the end of the season where you've probably gotten some guys beat up. You're going to need some younger guys to step up in a crazy environment. And you got Florida later in there, and I don't care what their record's at that point. Those games are always tough.
No doubt.
And so November's stacking up to be tough, but, like you said, it's a long ways away. And, if we get to those points and we've done what we had supposed to do, I feel like we can handle that, because I do think because of DJ and an older offensive line, an older defensive line, they have been in tough situations. There's some leadership there. If they continue to do what they're supposed to as leaders, leaders on the team, that we can get to November knowing it's a tough stretch and understanding how to handle that mentally and as a player in the locker room.
Yeah, the leaders, again, are going to be such a huge – they're so important. The leaders of these teams are so important, especially when it comes to traveling. Talking about Dublin, talking about going into Notre Dame, it is going to be a test. There's nothing else to be said about it. It's going to be a test. It'll be a test for any game or any team in the country. Number one team in the country, doesn't matter. It is going to be a test playing there. And like you said, it's going to be cold. It's going to be windy. It's going to be out of their element. And it's going to be towards the back end of the season. So I think you made a lot of really good points. So guys are going to have to really dig deep and find where it comes from. Coach Novell's going to have a hell of a week of practice. We're going to have to really do a good job training our eyes and doing all the things that we need to do. And we need to come in ready to play. There's really not much else to say. We got to come in there ready to dog them.
Prognostication. All right. I really struggled with this because there's times when I look at it and I say 12-0. Florida State's going 12-0. There are other times I'm like, well, wait a minute here. What if that passing offense really is struggling? All of a sudden, man, you can look at 3, you can look at 4 losses. So we all do it. It doesn't mean anything until you get to the week of the game and you know the injury situation and everything, and that's when you really make your predictions. But going in, I'm kind of looking at like a 10-2. I want to say 11-1. But I'm going to say 10-2. How about you, Nile? Your thoughts this year on their schedule? I have not given any predictions as of yet, but I'm with you. I'm probably leaning towards the 10-2, and it really sucks to even say that. But just as a realistic standpoint, where we are with our season, I think that if we still play well, we can get into the playoffs. And depending on how we lose those games, obviously, ESPN and everyone else hates us. But that's, I think, what Florida State feeds off of. That's what we feed off of. We want everyone to hate us. We want to be FSU against the world. And that's how it was when we won that national championship. It was a very closed room. It was just us and everyone else. After the Jameis stuff.
Exactly.
Yep.
It became a closed room, and we fought for each other, and we were able to make it there. So I would like to say that we would go undefeated, but I think a realistic record is 10-2. But if we can go into every game, obviously thinking we're going to be undefeated, I think we can make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm not a betting man, so I don't do much of this. I mean, I take it week by week. But what I will say is that statistically, it's really hard to go undefeated.
Yeah.
To do that back-to-back years would just like be unheard of.
Yeah.
So I lean more towards the 11-1, 10-2, but that's even with the caveat of that depends on how well our offense comes together and we're able to create and establish a run game and then not put everything on DJ to win games in the passing game. Because I think that there's going to be games where he needs to win in the passing game because teams are going to go, look, you're not going to beat us running the ball. We're going to make DJ and your receivers beat us. And so I think there is going to be, and if we can establish that and become efficient at that, then I think we can be 11-1, one team. You know?
I agree.
What I really hope happens, and this is where I believe Mike Norvell is now going to be, is you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. If you lose to Notre Dame because they're better, or Miami, or Florida's better, or Clemson's better, if you lose to a team that's better, that's one thing. But if you let a game get away where you can look at it and you know that you are the more talented team and you lose, those are the ones for me that have always been the most difficult to accept. So I want to believe Mike Norvell, guys are getting better, and he's starting to get better players that they will be victories. Hey, I really enjoyed this. Nile Lawrence-Stample, always good to see you.
Yeah, good seeing you.
I appreciate your time.
Awesome.
Todd Fordham, been a little bit. Great seeing you as well.
Always great to see you, Rick. I appreciate it. Always listen to you, so it's good to come in and see you.
Good to see both Seminole legends here. Nile Lawrence-Stample won a national title in 2013. Todd Fordham as well won one in 1993. We appreciate you listening to our Seminole Roundtable. I'm Rick Ballou. We'll talk again soon, and thank you as always.
Hey guys, Taylor Dahl here. Thanks so much for checking out 1010XL's Seminoles page. If you're looking for more college football content, you can head over to the Gators page, or if you want some professional football content, check out our 1010XL Jaguars page.